Picture a forest so deep and so silent that a single snapping twig could decide whether you live or die. In the middle of the 18th century, in this wild expanse of North America, while the British and French empires fought each other for control of the continent, real survival knowledge came not from books, but from the forest itself. In a forest like this, you cannot even be sure who your most trusted guide really is, since the man leading you might be steering you not toward safety, but toward his own private revenge. In this story, two young women, a British officer, a white frontiersman, and the last warrior of a Mohican line, all find themselves thrown together on the same deadly journey. The book is called The Last of the Mohicans. Let me tell you the story. The author of this novel, James Fenimore Cooper, was born in 1789 in the state of New Jersey, though he grew up in the frontier town of Cooperstown in New York State, a settlement founded by his own father and named after the family. His father, William Cooper, was a large landowner in the region, and young James came to know both the wilderness and the settler's life of the frontier firsthand from childhood. As a young man, Cooper served in the Navy, an experience that would surface again and again in his later novels. He came to writing fairly late and almost by accident. According to a story he himself told, he grew so annoyed reading a mediocre English novel aloud to his wife that he declared he could write a better one himself and wrote his first novel largely to prove the point. That first novel drew little attention, but the spy novel he published soon afterward was a major success and made him one of the country's best-known writers. Cooper had a deep fascination with America's colonial and frontier history, and he viewed the mid-18th century conflict between Britain and France, known as the French and Indian War, as part of his own country's founding legend. The Last of the Mohicans was the second novel in what he called the Leatherstocking Tales, a 5-book series following the same frontier hero, under changing names such as Hawkeye, Leatherstocking, and Pathfinder, across different periods of his life, from youth to old age. The novel was published in 1826 and quickly found a wide readership on both sides of the Atlantic. As its title suggests, the novel is set in 1757, during the height of the British and French struggle for control of North America, in the middle of the genuinely historical French and Indian War. At the story's center are the two daughters of a British colonel named Monroe, the composed Cora and her more delicate sister Alice, who are trying to reach their father's command at Fort William Henry. A young British officer, Major Duncan Hayward, escorts them, along with a somewhat naive but well-meaning psalm singer named David Gamut. But the group's actual guide is a cunning and dangerous French ally named Magua, who is not quite the guide he appears to be, since he is secretly driven by a deep desire for revenge, having once been publicly humiliated and whipped on Colonel Monroe's own orders. When the party becomes lost deep in the woods, they encounter a white frontiersman known as Hawkeye, along with the last Mohican chief, Chingachgook, and his son, the young warrior Uncas. This trio knows the forests, rivers, and dangers of the wilderness far better than Magua ever could, and they try to guide the travelers safely to the fort. At one point, they take refuge in a set of hidden caves behind a waterfall, feeling briefly safe there, until Huron warriors track them down even in that hiding place, and a fierce fight breaks out. Along the way come ambushes, river chases, and breathless escapes, one after another. Between Uncas and Cora, despite every barrier of race and custom, a quiet and deepening bond slowly forms. The fort eventually falls, and the British garrison agrees to an honorable surrender with the French commander Montcalm. But despite the terms of that agreement, the civilians leaving the fort are met with a horrifying massacre, one of the novel's most striking and also historically documented episodes, since the real massacre at Fort William Henry is itself a recorded historical event. During the chaos, Alice and Cora are seized and carried off by Magua. Hawkeye, Chingachgook, and Uncas set off after him to rescue the two sisters, and the pursuit turns into a long, tense chase, stretching from caves to waterfalls, through forests and Huron villages alike. Along the way, it emerges that Uncas is no ordinary warrior at all, but descended from a line of respected Mohican chiefs, a truth revealed in a tense judgment scene before the wise old sachem Tamanend. At the end of the chase, in a violent confrontation in a Delaware village, Uncas is killed by Magwa's men while trying to protect Cora, and Cora herself dies in the same struggle. Chingachgook hunts down and finally kills Magwa to avenge his son, but it is a bitter victory, one that has already cost the Mohican people their last young warrior. The funeral scene that follows is one of the novel's most affecting passages, showing what this loss means both personally and for an entire vanishing people. The novel's geography is also rooted in a real place. The action unfolds in the forested, mountainous country of what is now northern New York State, between Lake George and Lake Champlain. And because Cooper knew this landscape firsthand from his own youth, his descriptions of the forests, waterfalls, and rivers show a surprising degree of geographic accuracy. What keeps this book alive for readers today is not just the adventure, but a deep melancholy for a vanishing world. Chingachgook, as one of the last representatives of his people, stands as a tragic symbol of a way of life being erased, and the closing lines about the sun one day never rising again for the Mohican people directly explain the novel's title. Cooper portrays Native American cultures with a respect unusual for his era, though also with a degree of idealization that would later be both praised and criticized, since his noble savage portrayal humanized Native peoples, even as it simplified them away from their real complexity. The novel gave lasting literary form to one of America's founding myths, the tension between wilderness and civilization. The character of Hawkeye is considered one of the roots of the lone, nature-attuned American hero archetype that would recur again and again in later literature and film, an ancestor of everyone from the Western gunslinger to the modern action hero. The novel also opens what was, for readers of its day, a fairly bold discussion of interracial love, since the relationship between Uncas and Cora already crosses the social boundaries of its own historical setting. There is a striking detail behind this book's publication history. The novel found enormous interest in Europe as soon as it appeared, and Cooper quickly became the first American novelist to achieve real international fame, with translations following quickly into French, German, and other languages. The book has been adapted for film many times over, from silent and classic-era versions in 1920 and 1936, all the way to the best-known version today, the 1992 film with Daniel Day-Lewis playing Hawkeye. Cooper's Leatherstocking Tales entered literary history as one of the foundation stones of American frontier fiction, though his style was never beyond dispute. Years later, Mark Twain wrote a famously scathing essay mocking Cooper's technique, taking aim at his unrealistic dialogue and improbable coincidences. Even so, the novel's cultural influence never really faded, and the phrase "the last of the Mohicans" itself became a fixed English idiom for the final survivor of any group or generation. We have covered The Last of the Mohicans, a story of both a chase and a disappearance. If you would like to hear this whole story of the deep forest as an audiobook, you will find the link in the description. Subscribe for more books in this series. Until the next one, remember what the forest itself seems to whisper. Some peoples leave history behind, even as they disappear from it.